Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Propagandacast with me, ImperialDane, your host, your master, lord of propaganda, hero of the Reich, father, defender of the fatherland, and here we go, a 1 versus 1 on Semois. And first, some apologies, I would have put this up a lot earlier, but turns out, apparently, sometime earlier when I was playing another game on Steam, and don't play this on Steam, but when I was, and well, I have this microphone, and Steam apparently decides that whenever there's a microphone, it's apparently to transmit constantly. So I figure, well, I can't do anything about that, except I can turn down the volume of the microphone, thus not bothering anyone else. Apparently, it then turns out that whoever was the clever dick who put it all together also figured, well, hey, if he turns it down in Steam, then he must also want it turned down everywhere else. So when that means, apparently for some insanely stupid reason, that my regular microphone volume for when I was, for example, recording casts was also completely turned down. So to whoever who had Steam, and if you ever find this by coincidence, you're an idiot. Although I wager he's not, but still, he's an idiot, or they are an idiot. Could be there were more working laboriously on this solution. They're still idiots. That was still completely unnecessary, completely bloody flippin' stupid. End of discussion. We are here, of course, to continue the Market Garden days. Day 2 of Market Garden. Fighting still continuing through Holland in this conspicuously French-looking Dutch town, but I reassure you, while this is Semois, it is now Dutch Semois. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, Dutch Semois. And of course, rather divided into those 3 sectors, dividing the map in sort of the home sectors. And then the sort of fighting sector right here in the center with the small village here, in this case the Dutch village, with the church, the Dutch church, and the Dutch cafe, the Dutch wreck car, the Dutch tombstones, and the Dutch victory point. Anyhow, and the Dutch marketplace, let's not forget about that, lest some Dutchmen go really Dutch angry. So there we are. And of course, since this is Market Garden days, and of course we're having a nice night attack, we'll of course be having the British 11th Armoured Division under the command of Major Venestor. Yes, indeed, 11th Armoured Division, ready to show those Huns, those Jerrys, what fighting is all about, who's got the Star-Spangled Banner on. Wait, no, that's the Union Jack. I hope not any British got the Star-Spangled Banner on, or they might get beaten up by their other friends. Opposing them shall be our handsome friend, ImperialDane, hero of the fatherland, glorious soldier. 107th Panzer Brigade being moved in, reinforced by other elements that could immediately be sent into the fray. And let us get right down to this. The faster I can get this casted, the faster I can get this uploaded to you, and hopefully today. Since of course I also had to fight with YouTube, which is recently acting pretty tiresome, so hooray for me. Pioneer team ready, of course Wehrmacht quarters going up, British heading towards this point. This of course is not a bad point, so of course you can put down a truck on it. And of course keep it within range of your base MGs, meaning this point is pretty much secure unless someone's going to launch an all-out armored assault. And of course one thing to note, there are some starting strategies when you're Brit, but when one of the more usual effective ones is to put up the lieutenant second, of course so you have something to command, but then you move the truck on where you want it to actually, and then you plunk it down. Sometimes people go for an infantry section first. Trouble is, of course, an unsupervised infantry section is not really the fastest unit, it's rather timid, and so of course you're rather limiting your effectiveness, whereas of course just a lieutenant, he doesn't care if he's under command, he is the commander of troops. So of course he doesn't give a shit. Wait a minute, that's rough. Rude. There you go. Doesn't care, and then of course you can move the truck to wherever you want, perhaps in this case the fuel right there. For the Wehrmacht, the key is to have sort of wired off so you can't get harassed, and of course people love harassing Wehrmacht fuel, it's very, very rude. But there you go. Volkskrone is the first team on the field. Hooray, huzzah. Although they weren't actually Volkskrone by the time of Market Garden, although they were under training by this stage. They were being put together after the coup, where Himmler then got, or the coup attempt, and of course it didn't work out, then Hitler got into control of the replacement army and thus put together the whole Volkskrone concept. No, these are probably more likely just some sort of march troops, or replacements of some sort, could be who knows what. Just probably even Volkskrone, no, Luftwaffe troops told to be Fallschirmjägers, which by the end of the war was actually getting pretty common. They were basically just given paratrooper gear and then told they were Fallschirmjägers. Go fight for the fatherland. And we're seeing a Sunda bike out. Good for when you're, for example, expecting your opponents to go for Bren carry. Good for reconnaissance. Good for a bit of added firepower, since its machine gun isn't completely terrible, unlike the LMG 42. Infantry sections on the move. Recon section heading north towards this fuel point. No movements here to whatsoever. And the bike ever vigilantly spotting, and yes, indeed, spotting the infantry section right here. And of course, that is the radius that the bike can help you with. So of course, that's a nice reason to go there. And of course, immediately heading towards here as soon as I spot this. And of course, denying the British the cover. Of course, I can still get into the building. The bike rather realizes this. What does it do? It goes away, and the troops try to stay here beyond these 2 windows. So of course, the less windows, the less fire that can actually be directed against the Volksgrenadiers. Of course, that's just one tiny little detail. Reconnaissance section is on the way to put the pressure on my troops. And do I have the volume turned up? Yes, indeed. And I still hope you can hear me this time around, unlike last time. And again, my apologies. It was Steam being stupid, which I do find sad, since I do like Steam otherwise. Lots of fire, lots of danger. And the Volksgrenadiers are finding themselves flanked. Good flanking maneuver there by the British commander, by the way, using, of course, the more flexible unit for it. The reconnaissance section, but more Volksgrenadiers on the way. The bike heroically pushes the recon section about, keeping them a bit out of cover. And now more Volksgrenadiers, and the bike opening up quite a bit, pulling back towards the cover. And the chaps inside the building realize they're not going to do much, so they get out of there. Of course, the recon section is coming under quite a bit of fire. Volksgrenadiers blaring away from the side of the Dutch cafe, and the recon section is now losing another man, and we might soon be seeing my own flanking maneuver once more going through here. And yes, there we go. Volksgrenadier team on the move, sitting up here by the trees. And of course, again, heavy cover is directional, and now the other infantry section is coming under fire. But another infantry section, a third one, is moving in to stop this. The bike Volksgrenadier is on the move. The bike gets a damaged engine. I rather realize this is not going to look good, so I'm first pulling out the bike, since that's probably going to be at the hardest time getting out there. So the Volksgrenadiers will be carrying it. And of course, that is good, since I don't want to lose it. But the Volksgrenadiers will be taking some losses themselves. There we go. Few men lost, but the British are taking some losses themselves. They are quite wounded, in fact, as well, which might help me in the longer run, since of course I've lost little, and probably in the overall picture we probably have to expend the same amount of manpower to get all things reinforced up. Although his troops will be markedly more wounded. Pioneers in the south and some here in the west laying down some mines. Good show. And the bike, the Sunda bike, heroically getting away there, driving away ever slowly. The engine a bit of a mess. Third Pioneer team hits the field and putting up a Krieg barracks. Going to get the 107th Panzer Brigade some more armor, and of course, or infantry, something more sturdy at least. And of course I can't respond to that, so of course keep that in mind. I can't actually respond to you if I'm watching a replay, so keep that in mind. Anyhow, before Tommy Gaga so rudely interrupted me, I was about to talk about the Panzer Brigade, with sort of the interesting formation of trying to create some much more agile, smaller panzer units. And while the concept was interesting, the problem was that while they had their own Panzer Grenadiers, their own, I believe, reconnaissance troops and pioneers and such, the trouble was they lacked the organic artillery sort of with them the Panzer divisions had, which rather meant in the longer run they were also in a bit of a problem. Plus they didn't have that much infantry either, so they would run into some problems. And there we go, Volksgrenadiers is advancing, and in most cases the Panzer Brigades were disbanded within some time. Volksgrenadiers is opening up in the infantry section, which is awfully wounded, and I rather spot an opportunity. Another infantry section member down, 4 left, awfully wounded. Volksgrenadiers are also not looking too good at moving across open ground. This is a bad move by me, but in this case I felt rather bold. I felt, haha, I can win this. Iron crosses for everyone. And then of course they got beaten, and I rather realized that was silly. Pack 38 on the move, ready to prevent any sort of British armor. Bike moving in, lighting the road, thundering down the road, in fact. And there we go, recon section member down, and the bike moves in, moving in there, firing from the flank where the heavy cover does not apply. And there we go, recon section taking quite some losses, so does the other infantry section, in fact. And the bike moves down to hunt them down like the cowards they are. Not much luck with that though. Pack moving in, and another infantry section. He's so far gotten 4 infantry sections, I do believe. And that's quite a bit. That's about 1,800 manpower all in all that is in infantry. That's quite a bit. Plus, of course, there's also all the reinforcement that's going to be doing, in particular those about 8 men or 6 men that need to be replaced. That's only going to be a lot more than, say, 6 Volksgrenadiers. Pioneers moving in now. And the bike moving in to flank this position, opening up right there. Of course, again, cover is directional, moving up to fire from the side. And the cover won't be doing much. Rifle Grenadiers now on the field, it seems. Opening up, Pioneer down. Recon section moving away. Volksgrenadiers and bike once more getting out. Not really keen on those rifle grenades. Rifle grenades can be very, very dangerous. So be careful. You don't want your men to go kablooey. I mean, oh dear. Bit too swiftly and I can't keep up with myself. Volksgrenadiers on the move. Might be, yes, there we go. Grenadiers. Something slightly more solid, perhaps a bit more Panzer Grenadiers from the Panzer Brigade. Could they represent in our imagination? Oh, my apologies, just like this is a Dutch town and not a French town. Rifle grenades flying at the Volksgrenadiers, but they miss, hooray! Pioneers with flamethrowers also charging in. Rather interestingly to note, the British commander has so far not used a single emplacement. There we go, scorching the Brits. Burning away. One down. And the rest make a run for it. More infantry sections on the move. One is a recon section. Volksgrenadiers are now Pioneers and Grenadiers. So Volksgrenadiers are also there to support. And the bike, of course, can also move in if it so feels obliged. But no, it's a bit too wounded. And grenade going off, killing one infantry section member, scorching. The rest are getting scorched, burned alive. Crisp Brits. How do they like that for fish and chips? Well, that didn't make any sense. Advancing throughout the center now, the Wehrmacht quickly tries to establish itself. Pioneers and bikes moving in. The bike might want some repairs though. Looking a bit damaged. Dinged up. And the assault phase is now underway. Bike repaired, or at least getting repaired. And the Pack 38 advancing in. Field support truck is up. And a recon section is now up in the church. Hoping for God to aid their aim, perhaps. But rather realizing that God is no protection against the might of the flamethrower. Now the recon section is right out in the middle of everything. Guns down one Pioneer, but they're still under quite a bit of fire from all of this. Grenadiers taking a few hits from those rifle grenades, or not perhaps, and the Volksgrenadier team moves in from the south, having moved about here. And assault grenades being used, but the Brits discover this and run away. Instead, it might be the Grenadiers who get stunned. Yes, indeed. That's what you call not so fortunate. In the meanwhile, a captain has arrived, and he immediately, most dashingly, begins holding up the munitions point and demands that it turns over to the sovereignty of the British Empire. But in the distance, a bike moves in to show that captain who's boss. Grenadiers laying down barbed wire perhaps very soon to sort of create some difficulty for the Britons to move about in. And in the meanwhile, we are seeing a Stuart light tank commander already peeking out, although he should be careful he doesn't get shot in the head. And just as the barbed wire goes down, a Volksgrenadier is killed, and the German forces will have to retreat immediately, pulling back towards the Pack 38. In the meanwhile, a bunker is going up. Storm Armory is on the way, and Veterans 1 for German infantry is also on the way. Grenadiers and Volksgrenadiers pulling towards the cemetery. Pack 38 opens up, but it needs to be in a slightly more supportive position. It looks like someone died right there. 11th Armored Division pushing on with finally some armor, although very light. And recon section taking up positions. Grenades being lobbed at them. And the Pack 38 not positioned to actually get a few good hits off on that Stuart. Grenadiers taking heavy losses to the rifle grenades. 2 men down. The last awfully wounded. Pack 38 opens up on the Stuart, getting a rear armor hit. Volksgrenadiers and Pioneers moving in. Bunker is ready. And the Stuart decides to take a few shots, and assault grenades being used at the rifle grenadiers, giving them a bit of proper grenading. And that is, of course, the key when you're dealing with British blobs, so rather than ensconced, go for assault, knock them out of their positions, stun them, show them how you really do this. The rest are also taking some terrible damage. And again, he's rather lacking sort of, well, emplacements, casualty clearing stations, which is rather making things a lot easier for me, and of course a lot more expensive for him, since he hasn't really any manner of sort of recuperating all of the losses he's suffering. Stuart moving about, taking a Panzerfaust shot, and the Pack 38 can't really shoot through the bunker, So that is a bit of a bad bunker placement. Perhaps it would have been a better spot, but no, instead the bunker is pretty much in a bit of trouble. Volksgrenadiers retreating. Pioneers sneaking about, coming under fire, one down. The cemetery not looking too good. Either a bit desecrated, in fact. And Volksgrenadiers holding the line, but the contact section is rather going to persuade them otherwise. And let us go have a look at Venestor, who has not gone for doctrine. Bike moves right ahead at the Stuart light tank, but the bike rather realizes it's only armed with a machine gun and not a flak 88. Much to the dismay of the machine gunner in the sidecar, and a pack crew member goes down most tragically to those dastardly Brits. The British commander apparently going for an armored command truck. Rather interestingly, he has plenty of fuel though, but again he's spending an awful lot of manpower and constantly having to reinforce his troops, which isn't really working out to his advantage. Reinforcing right at the back at the base, the 107th Panzer Brigade doing its best, which at the moment is rather limited, although something is coming out of the Sturm Army. Could it be a Stug 4? Probably. Bike opening up, reconnaissance and rather finding themselves out in the open. Grenadiers on one side, bike another. Pioneers repairing the bunker and then running into the bunker. Pioneers advancing from the north, using a bit of fire on those Britons. And there we go, infantry section in the east, forced away. Volksgrenadiers with MP40s advancing. Infantry section getting scorched. German troops advancing. Rifle grenades flying through the air. Pioneers running away. Not too happy about that. And assault being used on the British troops. Stug 4 Sturmgeschützwehr. Although the Panzer Brigades wouldn't have had that. Then again, some other force nearby could have had. Certainly. What the Panzer Brigades did have though were the Jagdpanzer 4, which isn't in the game though. More specifically, they would have the one that had the same gun as the Panther. And mine is hit. I had landed one down there, and a shot also knocks out the gun, leaving this Stuart dead. But the armored command truck is up. Cromwell is on the way. Further advances by the British, absolutely ignoring this spot here. A bit unfortunate. He certainly could have achieved a bit more, and again spreading out my defenses. Rather, instead, he's allowing me to basically dictate things and basically hold this area out rather nicely. Stug 4 advancing. Stug 42 has also arrived on the field. Where that came from, I have no idea. Rifle Grenadiers coming under fire from Stug 4, taking losses. Stug 42 now opens up as well with its howitzer shell. And there we go, recon section blown slightly to bits. Well, some are blown to bits, others are just covered in the bits of their former comrades. And the lieutenant also decides it's better to get out of there than get thrown into the river by the explosion of the Stug 42. Bike moves in once more against the captain, deciding it's had enough of his roguish business. 2 kills so far, actually. And a third kill. Bike is a killer, though not quite an ace. British infantry is advancing once more, determined to push out the Hun from the center of the Dutch Semois. And Volksgrenadiers coming under fire, standing a bit in an unfortunate position. Infantry section hit. Cromwell advancing. 75mm cannon opening up on these Grenadiers, trying to lay down some sandbags so they can actually hold the cemetery on this spot. But coming under fire from the Cromwell, the Stug 4. Apparently not able to shoot on the Cromwell as of yet. But there we go, opens up, misses. Cromwell hits, but the frontal armor deflects it. The Cromwell wasn't really sort of had the same gun as the Sherman, so wasn't really good at penetrating frontal armor, although it had speed so it could flank. The Stug, on the other hand, had a much higher velocity armor, so it didn't really have much problem with Cromwell frontal armor. Infantry sections moving in for flank. Good job. Cromwell getting out of there. Stug 4 moving in for the kill. Volksgrenadiers doing their best to hold away the British are in the north. blazing away with the MP40 submachine guns, coming under quite a bit of fire, and we are seeing the commando doctrine. Although I'm not quite aware of this yet, I believe. In which case the Volksgrenadiers with MP40s will be capable in guarding against any sort of commando rage, in which case the commandos, if they try to rush against them, will get gunned down. And recon section coming under quite a bit of fire. Well, Stug 4 and Stug 42 really just blasting them to bits. Show there, and the Stug 4 certainly has managed quite a bit already. 5 kills and a vehicle knocked out. In this case, a Stug light tank. Grenadiers advancing against this lieutenant. Will the lieutenant be aware of the Grenadiers, or will they stomp him right in the back of the head? Apparently he will not be making out of there. No more tea and crumpets for him. And some rather heavy losses for the British now. Lost one infantry section, the others are direly wounded. Desperate need of reinforcements. And the Cromwell itself is also going to be needing some rather serious repairs. Again, he didn't really prepare himself for the sort of eventuality that I might be attacking again. My goodness, no. No mortar emplacements, no casualty clearing stations, no Vickers machine gun emplacements or anything. That's not quite good, actually. And he certainly also could have done perhaps with some sappers earlier to perhaps lay down some mines. I mean, he has plenty of munitions, so sappers, mines, great combination. Or sappers, 25-pounder, mines, also great combination. Or perhaps some tank traps, barbed wire. Perhaps some tea, I don't know, coffee, biscuits, pancakes, beer. And Staghound armored and in command. It arrives ever cockily on the field. Well, cocky. I'm not sure cockily is a sort of an adjective. In which case, if it is, it's awfully silly. The consection heading east. Staghound joins in for a bit of fun. Pioneers salvaging the steward for whatever munitions that can be traded in for something useful at the Wehrmacht supply store. And infantry troops advancing against these pioneers are laying down some mines, but coming under fire with rifle grenades flying through the air. The pioneers, though, are quickly running, and rather realizing something dire is going down in the south, and I do believe it's time for the mid-game analysis, although I was a bit too late for it. But currently not looking too well for the British. He's been rather penned into his base. He's, by the way, a level 12 Briton, so he ought to be knowing a thing or two about the Brits, but trouble is his rather infantry-heavy strategy has rather run into some problems. Yes, it gives you a lot of some raw power, but without tactics, without strategy, without the sustainability to actually keep it going, it falls apart, and that's really what so far seems to have been his problem. He can't sustain the losses. He's relying too much on raw infantry power, and he simply cannot keep up with the manpower losses. No casualty clearing station has. He doesn't really have anything to also free up troops, like in place, which of course means he constantly has to be focusing at the same few spots, which again isn't really working to his advantage. Me on the hand, I have retaken things despite a not so great start. The German counterattack is in full swing now. The 107th Panzer Brigade not letting stop despite not really having any panzers. So let us return to the fight ever hastily. Stug 4 on the move. Rather having divined that there's a Staghound down there after being told so by me, it moves in. The Staghound unable to really do anything with its tiny 37mm gun against the mighty 75mm gun of the Stug 4. And the Staghound really quickly gets out of there. And we are seeing some sappers with expert repairs on the way. That's really going to help that Cromwell quickly put it together, and in fact they can also over repair it if they so decide, meaning of course it will have even more health, making it even tougher, which is rather an advantage of the British. In fact, it had to be nerfed quite a bit since, well, it led to some rather crude tactics, if not at all tactics. But still, it's not to be underestimated. A Cromwell with more health than a, for example, say Sherman is still quite useful. Infantry section moving in, rifle grenades blaring, but Grenadiers and Volksgrenadiers are counter-attacking at the exact same moment, hoping to retake this area. And let us return to me. Stormtroopers and Stug 42s ready to call in. And the rifle grenadiers are taking losses, but a Volksgrenadier goes down. Oh dear, and this bunker has finally been upgraded to a medic bunker some time ago, though it's not really doing much now. Staghound moves in. hounding down those grenadiers and false grenadiers, rather causing a swift retreat since they don't actually have the assets to deal with it. At the same time, I'm rather figuring if I'm seeing a stag hound, he's probably not going to be far from those fireflies. In which case the key is to get a panther and also to sort of aid with that. I do have an observation post on this fuel point to rather increase the amount of fuel I can get. That's of course also something you can do, although of course question is how, when and where. It's sort of a bit of a juggle. Do I want more spent trade in manpower now for more munitions in the longer run, or more munitions fuel in the long run? Such are the mathematics of the battlefield. Infantry section taking up there, and I did hear the stew going about how great it is for the Axis Empire. I can only agree.
Losing territory.
And looks like he hasn't over-repaired the Cromwell. That's odd. You usually do. I mean, that's one of the reasons you get it. You can in fact over-repair a vehicle that isn't in need of repairs. So not sure why he's doing that. Something going on here in the north. Stu 42 moves in to investigate with its high explosive shells.
You defend the fatherland until death.
And looks like something was lost, but I'm not sure what. Mike moving in. Stu 4 moving in. Cromwell moving in. Infantry section taking quite a bit of damage. Stu 42 moving in from the south. And we are seeing a Firefly having hit the field and hitting the Stu 42 at the exact same moment, with the almighty 17-pounder gun. One of the most powerful guns of the war, pretty much able to penetrate most of the Axis armor except the King Tiger. It was quite effective, and sadly it looks like my assault gun drivers have gone into a bit of a panic, apparently not entirely sure what to do. Oh dear, bike, get out of there, you don't want to die. The Firefly, an ever dangerous opponent. And the Cromwell makes a mistake here and comes under fire and is knocked out by the Stu, which reports that they crumble like paper tigers. Stag hound being repaired, but sadly not over-repaired either. Interesting. Infantry sections getting ready, still no casualty stations or any other sort of emplacement to help. Firefly sort of casually hanging about. And Tiger's getting ready while the Panther arrives on the field. 80mm of sloped frontal armor, not quite as strong on the side armor though. Could in fact be penetrated by pretty much a lot. Even worse was the case with the Yak Panzer IV, which could actually be knocked out by pretty one of the older anti-tank rifles, like the Boys for example. That could actually knock it out, I do believe. So very flimsy side armor on those. But still, the Panther was a mighty tank with its high velocity 75mm gun. No allied armor, it pretty much couldn't penetrate from the front. And from quite in the distance as well. Stag are moving in. And this Duke is not looking too happy. Artillery being called down on the position right here. Stuke 4 moves forward. Oh dear, right into the line of fire of the Firefly, taking hits. Panther moves in to kill the Staghound. Stuke 4 can't move back, it can't move forwards, oh dear. And the Firefly kills it. The Panther moves in to exact vengeance, opening up on the Staghound through the cemetery, which has been at this stage pretty much desecrated. And there we go, a kill secured by the Panther, crashes through the old Stuke, takes a hit from the Firefly. Two Fireflies have in fact arrived on the field, but the Tiger is ready. Where it came from I have no idea, but now it is here, opening up on the Firefly. Able to do quite a bit of damage, since of course it had a much larger shell. Anything that was hit by it was pretty much not going to be happy about it. Panther taking quite a bit of fire, artillery being called in constantly. Moving in, trying to hit the Panther, but the Panther gets out of there. Firefly crashes into the river. Quite unfortunate there.
We are ready for blitzkrieg assault.
Oh, the last time it was on fire. Oh well. Infantry section hiding. Ever whimsically. While the Firefly hides as well in the background. And the Panther gets repaired, being in dire need of repairs, and some stormtroopers now being called in. Although, of course, in this case, since there weren't really any SS troops, I suppose, at this early stage of market garden right at the front, I suppose we could call them Fallschirmjägers, since they were there. And certainly also would have been a bit more, not quite Fallschirmjägerly dressed. Volksgunners and Grenadiers advancing. 107th Panzer Brigade still holding out. The Brits know, so though not quite as much. One Firefly out, so is the Cromwell, so is the Staghound, so is the Stuart. Panther opens up on the reconnaissance section. Tiger moves in for a bit of fun as well. Reconnaissance section though managed to get away before the Tiger opens up. And assault rifles for the Stormtroopers and a Panzerschreck. And in order to hold fire, they will advance, acting as pretty much as a reconnaissance team. That they can actually work as pretty decently since the enemy can't see them. Plus they can of course then be used to sort of launch an attack from an unexpected flank. Moving through the fog, the Tiger watches over. Ooh, Stahlvermont, the name of the Tiger. Nice detail, I actually never noticed that before. But again, that only shows Relic's eye to detail. And one of the reasons why company views is so great. There we go, another Tiger moving in. And they can't spot this since due to the sort of munitions point here, it does have a small range. Of course, the Firefly can use it to open up my Tiger, but the Tiger advances. Panther moves in, and Blitzkrieg, increasing the speed, rate of fire, and other bits on my troops and armor. Although the troops don't quite benefit as much as the rate of fire as the tanks. Although the tanks also gain a sort of penalty inaccuracy, but that is no worry since, of course, they fire twice as fast as before. And just look at them go. Fireflies lost in a clouds of smoke and fire, lighting the road like bonfires. The Tiger advances, so does the Panther, tearing away at the British forces. Volksgunners team is lost though, tragic. They were heroes of the fatherland, they shall be awarded Knights Iron Crosses posthumously, and there we go. Victory for the fatherland. Once more, exact same map, though this time you should hopefully be able to hear me. So there you go, a 1 versus 1 on Semois, Dutch Semois. Victory for the 107th Brigade, which managed to pull off a successful night attack on the British positions of the 11th Armoured Division. And what can we learn from this? Well, rather the main British problem was not the fact that he wasn't really tactically bad. I mean, he had some good ideas. He really got the drop on me right from the beginning. The trouble was, though, his strategy had one major flaw. Sustainability. He couldn't keep up with the manpower drain, and it simply bled him dry. He simply couldn't keep up with it, plus he clumped up his troops, which rather, when I went for assault grenades, really put the jackpot into his mouth, knocking out all of his teeth, which rather left him without much bite, as you might have noticed. So that, of course, is important, and of course he also tried to sort of have the Fireflies fight the fight, and Fireflies aren't really built for frontal fighting. They're sort of there to sort of fire from the rear of whatever is actually doing the fighting. What he could have done, of course, was get some emplacements a lot earlier. Mortar emplacement, casualty clearing stations, machine gun emplacements, something. But he didn't, and that was rather one of his main problems. He could also go against some sappers and laid down some mines earlier, but he didn't. That was rather his problem. He wasn't really prepared for a counterattack by the dashing German troops. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this fight, and I hope you will continue to enjoy these market garden days. Cheers.